I know.
Hey, Renee.
Hi, Annette.
Well, today we're going to talk about narcissistic behavior, narcissistic people. And we're doing that because we got a letter from one of our people who watch our videos. And they were saying, no one ever talks about how hard it is to step away from a narcissistic relationship, especially as Christians. And then they sent us a link, which was super helpful, to the article. And the article was called something like 8 Reasons Why It's Hard to Separate from a Narcissist. And it's from a Christian point of view, as being Christians separating out. And I'll include it for those who listen to this on the podcast or watching this on YouTube. I'll put that link in there. And if you're watching it on Facebook, just jump over to the YouTube version at Awake to Joy, or listen on the podcast, and I'll have it in the show notes. So you can have that link to that article.
Good.
All right. Well, though that article did talk about the reasons why it's hard to leave, I wanted to go ahead and start our discussion of what a narcissistic person actually looks like. So it's really clear to everybody, because growing up, I wasn't clear on what that looked like. I had hints and words that would line up with it. But as I've worked with people over time, the definition has become so much more clear to me. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure everybody's on the same page, as well as, again, our main viewers, or those who care for those who have been sexually abused and or are in the past been sexually abused. The narcissistic person usually will show up in the sexual abuse situations. And so because of that, that will always be the root of where I'm talking from.
Yes.
But are there narcissistic people that are not involved with sexual abuse? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And can those who have not had sexual abuse done to them relate to this subject? Absolutely.
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 Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about the most common that everybody can relate to really fast, is that this person that has this narcissistic ability, characteristics, is usually, if I was going to talk about a guy and girl relationship, they're getting love bombed. So the person who's narcissistic is love bombing on the other person. And we see that a lot with those that we coach. Yes. And here's this person who's just always wanted to be loved, especially since they've been a victim. Right. And here's this person just loving on them with gifts, with favors, with all sorts of different things, including rescuing them possibly from an abusive situation. So they become this hero.
Yes.
But it's not seen by the person who's desperate for rescue, desperate for love, desperate for attention, desperate for somebody to see them of value, because they feel such shame and guilt from the abuse that they've been in.
Yes. And their dream might have been to have a Cinderella rescue. You see all these princess movies, and you, as an abused person, you would hope one day that you'd have that rescuer come, that hero come. And so you can be blindsided for sure by a narcissistic person, because they look like they're that hero that you always imagined, at least at the beginning.
For a Christian woman to have somebody start quoting scripture, or even attend their church, or attend a Bible study, or say, let's do this Bible study together type thing. Again, it's going right into the field of where these are all the things that she would want.
Yes.
And by the way, this could happen to the opposite way. It could be the woman is the narcissistic person, and the male is the victim, the Christian victim in this sense. But they're cute, they're delightful, they're fun to be with.
They use the right words. They know, they learn, what's the word? They learn the language of the person that they are trying to prey upon. And for it being a Christian person, I'll be honest, I did not know a lot about narcissism until I became an adult. And we're talking within the last 10 years did I really recognize or learn the word. I remember having to look it up in the dictionary when friends were talking to me about it. It's like, oh, stink. It's a heavy word, big word. So I'm glad that we're bringing this topic up, because if I, being an abused person, as well as working with other abused people since then, missed that word, I can imagine others as well having missed it up until now. And it's true that article, there is a facts about it, that it's not something talked about. It's not talked about from the pulpit a lot, and not talked about just in your regular circles. So we needed to bring enlightenment to it about those characteristics for sure.
One of the things, and you don't want, there are people who are very charismatic, and you want to be around them. And there are those things that we had mentioned, but there's something else in there. It's the going from 0 relationship with this person to 100 within weeks. So it's like a whirlwind relationship of, they were never in your life. Now they're always in your life. As soon as you get off of work, or as soon as you get out of school, to all the way, every single day. And you could say, well, they're in love, all of this, but to me, it's a warning sign when they become the all and everything. Super fast. And for some, I'm married and I'm with my husband a lot of the time, but there's times I'm not, when I'm going off and studying God's word early in the morning by myself. There are times that we will sit together and read the Bible, but other times I need to have my time alone and be in the word when those things start disappearing, because this person has become so much more important.
Yep. They're manipulating those things.
And it's so much fun. And we're going to do this and that together. And so, yeah, to me, that's a huge warning sign, is when it goes from 0 miles per hour to 100 super fast within weeks. And they don't want to live without you. And they keep telling you that. And who doesn't want to be wanted? But if you were wise, you wouldn't want to be wanted like that.
There's a healthy part of being wanted, but then there's the extreme, which we're talking about. Like some can relate to this in regards to their healthy relationship of the first dating, falling in love. So there's healthy,
and it is a special time. Absolutely.
But we're talking about this extreme involvement of that person who's narcissistic. They're weaving themselves into every little crack and crevice and space that you previously may have had space personally for things to do. Now they're taking over those things. Let's us do this. Let's us do that. Well, put that down. Look at me. So you're doing less relationships with other people, less communicating with family. There's a lot more consuming of you during that 0 to 100.
And there's the blinding that goes on, where you're just getting attention where you weren't getting attention before. You're being doted on. And like I talked about, gifts. But there's little tips that are going to happen, that everything after a few weeks, it's going great. And then all of a sudden you're misunderstood, and it's like this big deal, where somebody was, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you understood I needed this kind of mustard, or whatever it is. I know it's a simple little thing, and they just are wounded. They're the victim now, and it's very upset. And you're wondering what the heck is going on. And it's all about them. It turned to these moments where you got shredded verbally over something so insignificant. It doesn't match what a Christian would look like, if that makes sense. It doesn't match the person from 2 weeks before that was on their P's and Q's, just watching everything so closely, to who they are now.
You. Yeah. Almost like a Jekyll Hyde moment.
Yes.
Something just leaked out.
Yes. But the bottom line is they're wanting to get what they want. And they just don't get irritated. They get resentful. And there's a difference there. You can get irritated, Renee, because certain things just aren't going the way you thought your day would go, type thing. But then to all of a sudden be resentful towards Eddie when he walks in the door, you're past irritated. You're resentful that he didn't take his shoes off at the door for the million times he didn't take off his shoes before then. And it's like the claws come out and you're like, wow, type thing. Instead of being forgiving again and moving on.
Right.
But we'll go through each of the different things. But those first things that show up in the beginning are the Jekyll Hyde, like you talked about, just very slightly. And you could see it just very slightly because they're still trying to be on really good behavior, as well as when you ask, well, how did your day go? And they go on and they tell you about their whole day. And you realize by the second or third week, they're not ever asking you how your day is. So then you offer to tell them how, well, guess what happened to me today? Well, first, let me tell you mine. And then you tell them and they do theirs. And then, well, we got to go here now. You could tell me that later. Your thoughts really don't matter anymore, but you're not realizing it.
Right.
It's just little things like that. As well as, and you could see this really well at a restaurant. When you see people treating servers really bad, and I'm sure you've seen it, that they're superior to everybody. But when they're first getting connected with the other person, they're not treating them that way. But eventually certain things start going that way where they believe they always are more superior than everybody. Everybody.
Yes. I call it the honeymoon stage. I call it that when you're fostering a kid as well. That there's this honeymoon stage, but there's especially it with working with that narcissistic person. I almost called it the wrong word. Working with a narcissistic person, there's a honeymoon stage that eventually,
they can't
keep up
really
the
fast. That honeymoon goes so fast, and the things that get involved in it are so deep. It's incredible. Incredible.
Yes.
We're talking about boundaries. So for some reason they have boundaries, and they could be as little as if you say, oh, do you have $1? I don't have money for the meter. And they say, oh, there's $1 or whatever it is. And then you guys go to dinner, she gets change. And then she says, oh, here's that $1 I owe you, or whatever it is. So, but they will go ahead and borrow money and never even think to ever pay it back. It's not in their mind. And it's just borrowing could be endless borrowing.
Correct.
And for Christians, if you say, hey, Annette, can I go ahead and borrow your bike? And sure, go ahead and borrow my bike. I already know that when I give you my bike, you may get in a bike accident, and I know I'm going to be okay. I might have to figure out another way for me to get to work if I use my bike to get to work, but I'm accepting the fact when I give you my bike, I'm actually giving you my bike. Yes, you could say it's to borrow, Annette. No, you never borrow any. You never even let out something that you can't afford to lend out.
Yeah.
And it's the same as borrowing. I really don't want to borrow your car, because if I was to borrow your car, Renee, there's a problem. I don't have money to replace your car if I hurt your car, right? If I get in a wreck with your car. But that's the responsibility I'm taking on myself. A narcissistic person would be, well, your steering wheel didn't work. That's what got in the accident. We're going to have to use your insurance. I don't have insurance.
And they will put the blame back on
you
as the person who loaned it.
Yes.
Not take responsibility.
Boundaries. When you say no, they don't think your no is really no.
They'll always push it to the limit and take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with Christians, that seems to be where the no goes out there, because they're not used to somebody being in that kind of behavioral tone, especially since they're calling themselves a Christian.
Mm.
and you're saying no, but it still isn't respected.
No.
But when you go to do something and they say no, oh my goodness, their no is firm and you need to respect their boundaries.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then they get angry, and they don't always just get angry. They come across as, I'm so hurt.
Yeah.
Look what you did to me. So it's anger plus hurt and being a victim. And
They twist it. Boy,
it's so twisted.
they twist it back to make you, even as a child that's being abused, as we're talking about coming from that angle, they twist it so it looks like you're responsible to make the adult decision. It was your responsibility to have stopped them.
Yes.
Those kind of things. Sorry.
Bringing up child, when I'm describing a narcissistic person, it always goes into the back of my head that I'm talking about a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old, even a 5, but it gets less as the child gets older. But they're very self-centered, and that's what a narcissistic person is. It's very self-centered.
Extremely.
It's just a narcissistic person gets better as they get older to cover it up, so they don't look and sound like a 2-year-old type situation. But when I look at my grandchildren that are young, I could see that unless somebody comes along and says, no, we need to care, we don't do that, because if we did this, and then the parent shows them, because this would hurt this person, or it would they show empathy. They're showing them all these things. Well, a narcissistic person doesn't see that. They don't have the empathy. They don't care. It's about them. The same as a 1-year-old, they want it now.
Give me my milk. Give me my
and they'll
food.
Scream, they'll holler. And then again, we talked about anger issues. So screaming, hollering, then they're just hurt. How could you not love me enough to give me the milk? Right? Yeah. Well, that's the same it is for a grown narcissistic person. How could you not love me enough? I love you unconditionally, and yet you won't go ahead and do this for me, or give me that, or whatever it is.
Yep. And they look kind and they look charming to everyone else, but not to you.
Yeah. Jealousy comes in the way with them, and it's just an ugly green monster.
Very.
They could be jealous because you have the power and they don't. They got to be the one that has the power. They got to be the one that everybody desires, not you.
Yes. Not you, and not you as the victim desiring other things versus desiring them.
Correct.
That's huge when it comes to the abuse picture as well, is that narcissistic person they will see you still surviving, you still thriving, delighting in other things, and they will try to take even those things away, be it a relationship that you have, a friendship that you have, or a boyfriend.
You're doing it for your own good.
Yeah, you're doing it to enjoy life still. But that narcissistic person who is also the abuser, they now will go and take those things and manipulate it, control it, they want to bring that attention back at them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Power, beauty, success, status. They want to have the highest point in the relationship on that.
Yes.
They don't care about your feelings. With childhood abuse, assault, the person who's abusing does not care about the feelings of the victims, or they would never do it.
Yes.
Because of the lifelong issues and harm that it causes emotionally, spiritually, physically in the victims. If they cared at all, they would never, they'd go to God, take this feeling from my mind, take this thought from my mind, because it's just, they just don't care. Again, it's back about them, themselves.
And even when you practice, I was thinking of this when you were talking about boundaries, even when you as the victim set a boundary and you say no, and they show remorse, the unfortunate thing is, if they are the narcissistic person, they're still self-serving. And so that respect might look like there's a respect right there when they back off in that moment, but it breaks pretty quickly. They're back at the actions.
They're
That
back at
was
the
my
actions
experience.
again.
Yeah. And then that was my experience. And then I wondered, well, what did I do wrong? You know? And as an adult, you could think, why wasn't I strong enough? Why wasn't I this? Why wasn't I that? So even it still comes back at you, blaming you for something when it was all them and their actions. Their
You're the one who's
self-defense.
causing me to do this.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Everybody loves to be listened to. And part of that honeymoon phase is them listening to, like you said, they're listening so closely so they can go ahead and mirror what this person is needing. So if the victim of sexual abuse wants to share with this person that loves them so much, that has come into their life like a whirlwind, they will go ahead and listen. That's not the same as listening with your heart and compassion. They will listen so they could use it later to go ahead and fill needs or remove needs. They want you, of course, to listen to all of their feelings. That is for sure. And in the end, there really isn't room for you to talk, to give your opinion. That's just not there. And all decisions become theirs.
Yeah.
Because they don't care about your feelings.
And it's true. My heart's beating because I recognize that. You know, just an example of that would be, no, my abuser, it wasn't about them listening to me, but it was, I received attention. I remember getting attention once, you know, just listening to a record and dancing, bebopping around. And they came in the room and, go ahead, keep dancing, have fun. I was like, wow, they're taking the time, you know, they're taking the time to enjoy what I enjoy, listening to the music and
dancing.
And yeah, letting me be me as a little 6-year-old, whatever age I was. And it was used, it was manipulated, you know, it was manipulated. So the next time, the thing I enjoyed that they observed and pretended to like as well, that became part of the abuse. You know, it became some of the elements of the abuse. And I hate that.
Yes, and you have a good reason to hate that.
I do, yes. But it was a phony, like you said, it was a fake listening. It was a phony being interested in the things that you're interested in. It's not true. It's not, like you said, from the heart and about you at all. There is a scheming going on underneath the surface.
Yes.
It's what I have picked up. To self-serve.
Yes. That's sad.
Yeah.
Taking responsibility. They always deflect it. It's always somebody else's. They deny it. If there's credit to be taken, they definitely will take the credit, the applause. Positive feeds the beast. So even when somebody's in a relationship with somebody who's narcissistic and things are going wrong, all of a sudden they start throwing compliments because they realize that's what they needed to hear in the first place. And it kind of soothes the anger, soothes the beast, if that makes sense. But I remember in a work situation that there was somebody who definitely had narcissistic tendencies. And he came into the office and just happened to forget there's cameras everywhere where I work. Well, there was a camera where I was stationed at my desk and everything. And he came in there and did some stuff. And I called him out on it. And he said he never did it or whatever it was. And there was a camera back at his locker. So there was the camera where I was, the camera out by the locker type thing. And he was putting things in his locker that he shouldn't have been putting in his locker type situation. He said he didn't have it or whatever it was. Then the camera caught that part. Then he came back in the other. And then he goes ahead and realizes things aren't great. I'm going to have to take you to the manager. So he goes to the manager and just tries to deflect. Annette is doing this or whatever it is, and all this negative. And so my boss is listening. And I said, let's just stay in the office here and have security bring in the film and we'll watch.
Amen.
And that was the moment. It was like, well, where's the camera? And the cameras are in plain sight. But when you work at a company for many years, you forget where cameras are and all of that type of situation. And thankfully I was vilified because there was cameras to watch the situation type thing. But even when it all was proven and everything was there, he still was denying the fact that he took it, and it was in his backpack, which was by his leg. And even when, he was asked to open it when the police showed up, and he said, I don't know how it got in there. It's on video. He saw the video with all of us in there with his hand putting it in his backpack. But he was running out of excuses and came up with, I just don't know how it got in there.
But probably sounded really convincing.
And probably, it was still my fault because I was asking him to do stuff that day.
And so he wasn't thinking, and it went into the backpack. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I've seen that. Yeah. I've heard that over and over and over again, even when they have done the crime. Seriously, where they have done the crime. We're talking outside of just abuse crime, but crime period. They still, they will do everything they can to convince everybody that they're innocent.
But isn't that like a little kid?
Man, yeah.
But isn't that like a little kid?
Absolutely.
And how they're having to be taught as a little child that this is unacceptable. Somewhere along the way, they didn't get that part.
Yep.
I think you mentioned something about the isolation process, and that's another characteristics that will happen is they will start isolating the person from family, friends. When a Christian relationship, a lot of times it will be from church, separate groups that you would go to, but just going to church on Sunday. And eventually that will drop out because of the shame that's coming from the relationship. And so the person that's the victim in this case doesn't want to go to church anymore because their no's haven't been kept and they've gone into saying yes to things they don't want to say yes to. And they're not proud of this relationship, but at the same time, they keep praying that Jesus is going to change it. And if they just keep praying that even this isolation will be okay, because the person that's the narcissist just wants to be with them. They love them so much. They want to have time with them alone.
Or help them. I have some friends who stay with that narcissistic person for the help, because I'm just going to say it, that monster says they're there to help. If it's financially or babysitting or relationally, they're the one that they can get the hug from when they need the hug because they can't find it from.
But they'll also control social media, financial. They'll get involved with them financially. So it's so hard for them to pull out financially, as in buying big purchases or getting a joint checking account where both of your checks are put in weekly. And it looks very innocent to a lot of people. They fall for it for the sake that, well, we're both putting our money in it. Eventually one day we're going to get married, but we're just not ready to get married now. But they both are putting, so I'm seeing their check go in and I'm putting my check in it. So but the thing is, when you have both names on the account and then you're a narcissist, you start controlling things more.
Yep.
And then I start pointing out, as the narcissist, you just don't know how to control your money, you're spending and all this, Renee, and I need to pull that money out and put it in a separate account from you, and you only get this much money. It's happened so little by little. As well as a way to isolate them is to have children with them, because you don't want to have a divorce being a Christian. Right. And or if you got pregnant out of wedlock, now you definitely don't want to be around your church friends or family type situation. It just pulls into this vortex that's going down deeper and deeper. And you don't want
the lies just lift, the lies just layer.
The lies just layer. Absolutely. And then the manipulation increases to big time belittling, putting you down, not just by the two of you alone, but in front of other people. Yeah. So now it's gone more public. So now you really don't want to be around other people because they'll see how uncaring he actually is, or how uncaring she actually is. And it can be covered by a lot of jokes.
I've seen that. Yeah.
A lot of jokes, but they're real and they're hurting because there's so much of the joke that is true.
Yeah.
And the narcissist knows that you know. And you're just praying, please don't go any louder or longer with this conversation. I am so humiliated.
It's unfortunate.
The manipulation includes them, again, they're the victim. Any argument that starts, they're the victim in the argument. It's always going to be the other person's fault. And you did this to them. I was so much more happier before you came into my life, type thing. You did it. You did it. You did it. You're crazy, not me. You're crazy, not me. This happens with sexual abuse so much that the person who's abusing will make the victim feel like they're losing their mind. So they start gaslighting them. Yes. So they slowly stop trusting themselves. That really didn't happen. No, that didn't happen way back when.
Your memory's lapsing.
Your memory's lapsing.
You're imagining.
It was too long ago. You have a really good imagination.
You're so emotional. You're overthinking this. You're dramatizing.
I was just hugging you. I wasn't doing this other stuff to you. I just wanted to love you, hug you, that type of thing. You're thinking something went too far. It really didn't. And you're thinking, wait, and all these, it makes you doubt. And stories will change so that the person will get confused. No, we were together and I was just hugging you, but we were at Denny's. We weren't even at that other restaurant you're talking about. We've never gone there. And the person's thinking in their mind, but we always go there. And now you're saying we never have gone there, but they don't have proof. Yeah. And so they're kind of wondering in their head, what the heck's going on? The narcissist will buddy up with somebody else and stand there and tell the other person, maybe a coworker from work. And then when they see the person that the narcissist is abusing, will have this person standing next to him, confirming and convincing that the victim is totally crazy. Yeah. They've lost their mind. They just don't know.
And they play it so well because they'll wind you up. If that makes sense, wind you up so that you will lash out or respond out of something that they've just orchestrated. I'll call it that. They've orchestrated something and put all the pieces in place, wound you up so that when you set off or let go or start cursing or whatever it is, you let loose, they make sure there's a witness that can then
look at the way she's acting. Look at this.
Yeah. Pin you as the crazy person, pin you as look at how she's flying off the handle. Oh my gosh. And that narcissist is the one that's calm and acting like, I hear of that with even the domestic abuse situations as well. You know, they will wind it up so that as soon as they get the cop there, the victim is the one that's now lashing out, acting out, lashing out, finally doing something, but they've played it so well that they've now orchestrated the other pawns in there to be fooled, to be made that the victim is the narcissistic abuser, whereas it's the opposite.
Right. And it's the actual flip of the whole situation.
I hope that all made sense.
The other is they are very black and white. They're either a winner or a loser, and they're not going to be the loser.
No.
There's no middle ground. If you threaten them, they will seek to destroy.
Yeah.
No threat. No threat. You don't want to be threatened to come their way. And it doesn't matter what the circumstance, they need to win.
At whatever cost.
At whatever cost. Cheating, whatever it is, they're going to win.
Yeah. Even threatening to your life, which I've seen that as well.
Yes. Yes. They're in charge. That's the way they got to have it, or they're out of control. And they can't be that way. They can't have the world out of control. Now, a lot of people who are fitting 5 or more of these different things would be labeled narcissistic in most worlds. But as well, if you look at all of that and you think about it, and again, I compared it to being a very young child will have a lot of these different, I mean, how many times do you play a board game with a 5-year-old and they have to win or they break down in tears? Okay. So some of this stuff sounds very familiar to little children's behavior. But if you've been treated that way for many years as you were young, with somebody who was narcissistic as a parent, it's very important for you to understand that you're going to take on some of those traits.
Yeah.
So the narcissistic person is very controlling. And when you're sexually abused, what's the one thing you do not have?
The control.
Control. So those that are stepping out of and recovering and going through healing must so watch that, because that is so number one on their list is to be in control, which starts making them have narcissistic behavior. Ooh, that one hurts, especially for those of us who have been abused. That one's a hurtful thing to say.
It's one thing to be controlling, but then it takes it a whole nother level when the picture in my head is you become that narcissistic controller and you're the stabber. You know what I mean? You're sharp with your words and you are just relentless in certain areas that you don't let go. And there's also an immaturity as well that's with it, because you haven't learned how to heal, grow out of it.
And mature.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some haven't even recognized it, that they've carried it into their adulthood.
Oh, I know. I took controlling into my adulthood for sure. And it's something I still, and I've talked about it in other chats that we have had, that I always got to be on check with it. Otherwise, I will be a control fanatic and I don't need to be there. It's not wonderful for everybody else at all. And it puts responsibility on me I don't even need, because I'm trying to take control. And it's okay that I'm not in control. And I got to realize that. I got to realize that I need to put things in God's hands.
True.
So that's a toughie right there. But it's not just the control. It's so many other dimensions. Again, because of the being with somebody who is narcissistic all those years, you can't expect to walk away scot-free that you haven't taken on some of those characteristics, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's always good to go through this list that I'm talking about, some of the things that it would look like. You could ask a trusted source in your life. I know that would be kind of tough to do. But everybody, by the way, is selfish at different times.
We are born as a selfish nature.
It is something, but what I'm talking about is consistently having these behaviors and acting out in them.
Yeah.
We talked about takers, be it money, be it whether respect. So I take away all respect that you have for yourself, Renee, and to the point where you're shamed. I'll take away your spiritual life if I'm a narcissistic person, so that I'm your God. I'm the one that you check in for everything. And when I'm done with you, by the way, I will toss you to the side, because I have no problem tossing you to the side, because there's always another Renee out there. And that's how a narcissistic person thinks when they're taken.
And then next. Yeah. They're like, got
even though in your
wire.
mind you said you loved me, and you started going along with all these things, but you weren't paying attention to the red flags. You weren't listening, because if you have people who love you around you, they would start saying, hey, there's a red flag here. I know you started dating this person, but we're seeing red flags.
Yes.
It's really important that you listen to those who are around your life who love you, so they can protect you and give you insight and be praying for you when you start in a relationship, even if it's a work relationship.
I was going to say a friendship even. So we're not talking just
Even
dating.
women friendships, men friendships, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Then the article the article that was recommended to us talks about how hard it is to leave because of the trauma bond that happens in all of this. And so I think we'll make that part 2.
Sounds good.
All right. We will talk soon. Bye.